It's time to feel what you've been bottling up. Life in rural America isn't easy. The long hours, the constant pressures, the demands of the land, livestock, and family, it all takes a toll. We're tough and we've got grit, but somewhere along the way, toughness started meaning bottling up emotions and powering through. But here's the truth. That strategy, it's not working and it's poisoning us. Maybe you've noticed and maybe you haven't, but the numbers don't lie. We're breaking down and it's showing up in our bodies, our relationships, and in the rising suicide rates in agriculture. You don't have to carry any of it alone. There's another way. If you're ready to stop being weighed down and start moving forward, my one-on-one good movement guidance is now open. Visit the link in the show notes to learn more and see if one-on-one guidance could be for you.
I'll carry you, you carry me, we'll help each other through it. Come on and say good movement draws good movement.
Welcome to Good Movement Draws Good Movement, the podcast where farmers, ranchers, and rural folks can grow relationally through awareness, understanding, and effective communication. Hey, it's T. I'm your host, and I, along with my guests, will be covering topics related to drawing good movement. Things like self and social awareness, brain science, positive psychology, extending grace, and so much more. We'll share tools that can help you understand why you are the way you are, why others are the way they are, and how you can use that to step out of self-told lies with grace and compassion to draw good movement in conversations, relationships, and life in rural America. Let's go draw good movement. Welcome back to the Good Movement Draws Good Movement podcast. And cue Rod Stewart, because I do wish that I knew what I know now when I was younger. And that is what this episode is all about. More specifically, it's about what I said in episode 38, the one where we talked about attachment and attunement. When I said I was salty that I didn't learn about those things and how they affect every aspect of our lives sooner than my late 30s. In that episode, I went on to say that had I known what I know now, I would have done some things differently in my parenting. But then I left you hanging on the specifics of what I actually would have done differently. And a few of you listeners reached out and asked me what those things are. So that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. And the first thing that I would have done differently is something that you might not immediately go to as we're talking about parenting, but this is the first thing that I would do differently or would have done differently had I known, because this literally impacts any parenting practice that you could put in place. And that is seeking help in my own healing and filling the holes that I had in my own attachment brain. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about what life was like when I became a parent, and then we'll come back to this idea. When we started our family, I was working full-time at a feed yard. I had to be up every day at the back of dawn, which is like the crack of dawn, but it comes before the crack, to go to work. And I didn't get home until around supper time every evening. So up at the back of dawn, not home until supper. Now, do not get me wrong. I absolutely loved what I was doing. I loved my role at the feed yard. In fact, I had zero intentions of leaving that role until God intervened and got us to where we are now. I think that I've talked about this in one of the first few episodes of this podcast about how Tom and I got where we are today. I'll look back, and if I didn't, we'll make it a whole podcast episode because I think it's a great story. But anyway, all this to say, when we started our family and we welcomed our first and second born home, I was on that schedule. Back of dawn, not home till supper time. So I set them up on a schedule. More specifically, I set them up on a sleep schedule. So with my working schedule, I needed my sleep to be a functioning human being. And because of that, I set them up also on a sleep schedule. Now, I'm not here to debate what's right, wrong, indifferent when it comes to our children's sleep or how we choose to parent. That's not the debate here. Actually, there is no debate here. I'm just sharing what I would have done differently. And you can do with that what you will. What I am saying is that when we make these parenting decisions, we're doing the best that we can with what we have and where we are. And at that point in my life, I was someone who needed my kids to sleep so that I could sleep. And I chose to put them down in the evening, and they did a little bit of cry it out. I would pat their back, but I wouldn't pick them up. We did zero co-sleeping. If they woke up in the night, I would feed them and I would lay them right back down and pat their back, and then they would go to sleep. That is what was best for me in those moments. And so when I say that the first thing that I would do differently, knowing what I know now, is to seek help in my own healing and filling the holes in my own attachment brain. I truly mean that, because had I known about all of the healing that I have done or needed to do back then I could have made a different decision for my kids that would have affected their attachment brains. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a horrible mom. I'm not. And I'm not blaming myself for potential holes that I've caused in my kids' attachment centers, because again, I was doing the best that I could with what I had, where I was at in that moment. I'm in a different place now. And so if I were to start our family all over again or have a newborn now, which for one thing I can't, and for another thing, I really am past that point in my life. So no more kids, no more newborns for us. But if I were to do that, one of the things, including getting my own help for my own healing and filling the holes in my own attachment brain, one of the other things that I would do differently, and that I can do differently now because I've done my own healing, is not put the kids on such a strict sleep schedule, not have them cry it out with a pat on the back. I would do more co-sleeping. I would do more baby wearing. I would have them literally attached to me to improve or try to improve their attachment brains, because attachment, again, is at the base of that is the foundation on which our brains and logic and all the things are built. And so I think when people reached out and asked me what things I would have done differently, they were looking for I wouldn't have had them on a sleep schedule. I wouldn't have sleep trained the way that I did answer. And that is one thing that I would have done differently. However, without the healing and that I've done and the help that I've sought out and the work that I have done on my own inner being and my own self, if I was put right back in that position with a newborn, in the job that I had, with the schedule that I had, I would not have made any changes. I would have done everything exactly the same. And so when we say, oh, this is what I would do different, or this is what I would have changed, we're saying that from a different place than what we were in then. At least I am. So what I am salty about is that I didn't understand how important attachment and attunement were until my late 30s. I didn't understand to even seek help or entertain the idea that I had holes anywhere. I thought, and I did, I had a great childhood. And I thought that because I had a great childhood, that meant I was a pretty well-rounded, complete human with zero pain and zero big T or little t or any sort of trauma or adversity in my life. But when you get right down to it and you open your mind, because we are humans being raised by humans who are imperfect, and we too are imperfect, and we're in relationship with other imperfect humans, we do not get to walk through this world or grow up or be raised or live here without pain, without some adversity, without some little t, big T trauma. Like that just does not happen, even if we had a great childhood. Even if we have a great childhood and a great adolescence and a great college and a great marriage. Like if everything is great, that's awesome. But also, we don't get to move through this imperfect world without pain. That's the way it is. And believe you me, I have tried like the Dickens to stick to that thought that, oh, I can make it through without pain. I can numb it. But you know what that is? That's exactly what it is. That's numbing. I was numbing. There's still pain and there's still suffering and there is still hurt. And when we try to push those things down, it gets passed on to those around us. And specifically, our children pick up on it really, really well. So, going back to what I would have done differently, the first thing, the most important thing that I would do differently if I were to start this journey all over again in the place that I was, with what I had, where I was at, I would have sought healing for myself and I would have worked to fill the holes in my own attachment brain. Now, because I've done that work, I can say these things. I would have done this differently, or I would have done that differently. But that's because I'm in a different place. So I wanted to use this episode to answer that question of what I would have done differently. But we will continue to talk about attachment and attunement in the solo episodes to come because it is so important. Like I said, it's the foundation. Attachment is the foundation. And the good news is that even if we have some holes in our attachment brain, we can fill them as adults. Like we have the agency to do the work and to heal. And so we're going to continue to talk about this. And with that, until next time, draw good movement. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm so grateful for you. If you found value in this episode, I'd love for you to share with others who might also benefit from tuning in. Share by word of mouth, send it in a text, take a screenshot and post it on social media, or share however you prefer. And if you haven't already, hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Until next time, draw good movement.